The Honourable Phil Goff.
Mr Chairman, Part 1 of this bill sets out the purpose clause, and the purpose is, of course, to enable New Zealand to become a member of the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, and then the rest of the bill implements our obligations under it, including in the whole of the Articles of Agreement, which take up about 30 of the 34 pages. Labor supports this bill, and the reason that we have supported it, both at Select Committee and here in the House, is because there is a gap in infrastructure investment in the Asia region, and this bill enables us to join a bank which will foster sustainable economic development. But I have questions for the Minister and the Chair, whom I'm sure is very well informed about the bill. The first thing, when we assessed whether we should become a member of the bank, it's very well known that the United States was opposed to countries joining up to it. And it was opposed for basically two reasons. First of all, it claimed somewhat curiously that investment needs were being met in the Asian region. And I say curiously, sir, because both the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank, which are both operating in this area, suggested that a further $1 trillion was needed each year to support economic growth in the region. So it's not a case of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank elbowing out other banks, but rather supplementing those banks to meet an unmet need. The second reason that the United States appeared to oppose this was because it said it would expand the influence of China. And I actually concur, curiously, with the comments of the Minister of Finance, who made it clear that the gap was there and it was real, and that the old Bretton Woods institutions weren't doing the job. And partly they weren't doing the job because they reflected the world as it was in 1945 and not as it is in 2015. And one of the outcomes of that is that China was actually constrained from playing the full role that it ought to play in Asia under those Bretton Woods institutions. It's quite clear that China is an economic superpower. It's the second largest economy in the world, and equally that gives it responsibilities and obligations to help other countries in the region, and by providing infrastructure investment it can do that. Of course, under what's set out in this bill in the Articles of Agreement, China will end up with about 25 to 30% of the voting rights. That gives it a significant role, and that's partly because it invests $30 billion out of the $100 billion that will be available for infrastructure investment. But my question to the Minister is this: as we work through the process of agreeing to become a member of this bank, what approaches were made directly or indirectly, formally or informally, by the United States to try to persuade us not to become members? As it happens, its expressed opposition to the bank has not prevented the vast majority of countries in the region, 38 regional members of the bank from the Asian and Middle East region, and 20 non-regional members signing up to the bank. That includes other countries like Germany, France, the United Kingdom, and the Scandinavian countries that are clearly very much part of the Western developed world, but nevertheless see some real benefit in having this bank set up and operating. I want to just touch briefly on the amount of capital that we're putting into it, because I know other parties in the House might have some concern about that. The subscribed capital is $92 million US. That, however, is payable over 5 years, so the amount of money that we're sinking into it each year is less than the referendum on the flags debate. So probably about, I think it's about 22 million a year it comes out at. We also put up US 369 in callable, Mr. Chairman.
The Honourable Phil Goff.
We also put up 369 million in callable capital. But when I did a little bit of research on our participation in like institutions, to the best of my knowledge, the callable capital that we have committed to has never been called up because the institutions have never run into financial difficulty. And I'd like the Minister, if possible, just to confirm that fact. So the 369 million US dollars that we will subscribe in callable capital is unlikely to be called upon. Why are we becoming a member of this bank? That's what the Purpose Clause addresses. I think the first cause, sir, very clearly is economic, that our future now is inextricably linked to the future of the Asia-Pacific region. And as such, with most of our largest trading partners in Asia-Pacific, we have a vested interest in how well the region does. I did a free trade agreement with China and with ASEAN. Those countries are all part of this bank, and those countries, particularly the ASEAN countries, will benefit from having a bank that will improve its infrastructure, the infrastructure of the countries, and improve their economic performance. That will have a flow-on effect for New Zealand. So it's the right thing to do, but it also will benefit New Zealand economically from doing it. The other benefit we get is from our connectivity to the market. We are a country that has origins as a Western European country, but we have fought very hard to be seen as an active, participating and contributing member in the Asia-Pacific region. And as a small country, we don't have a very large share in this bank or voting power, but it is the symbolic importance of us being seen to be committed to the development of the region. And what's really important from my experience in working economically in trade matters with the Asia region is building relationships. Before you can do business, you need to build a relationship. And this, for us, is about building that relationship. The third reason why we're being a member, I think, is because it gave us a chance to get in very early on in the development of this bank and to influence how that bank would be set up and the rules under which it would operate. And I want again to pay tribute to John Whitehead, who represented New Zealand in those negotiations. I think he did a fine job. I think we were able to help ensure that the membership of the bank is broad and open. We were able to ensure that there are sound governance and appointment processes followed by the bank. That was important. I think we probably exercised an influence beyond our size. We were able to establish the principle that decisions have to have regard to economic and social issues. And for us, in the importance we place on those things, that is also very important. But most importantly, we were able to help ensure that this bank will operate according to economic and financially sustainable principles. As a result, there will be proper oversight for investment decisions and for development outcomes. And there will be international best practice for the way this institution runs. When we did the international treaty examination of the bank, there were also risks pointed out, but I think we've been able to mitigate against those risks, Mr. Chairman, and I think the arguments very clearly are in support of our participation in this bank. I commend those that helped negotiate the agreement, and the Labor Party will be supporting this bill through its final stages.